What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and apparently I'm kind of a glutton for punishment because I keep going back very frequently to religion and politics and other things that people tend to get very heated over, but I'm doing it again. So the reason I want to cover this particular topic is because while I was out getting my car fixed pretty recently, I just saw a thing on the news that kind of put a different angle on some of this issue, so I thought I would talk about it. And that issue is illegal immigration. First off, I just wanted to make sure that we define what exactly illegal immigration is, and it seems pretty obvious, really. Basically, it means if somebody moves into a country, in this case the United States, in a way that violates that country's immigration laws, ours in this case, and they intend to stay. Now, there are actually a couple of different ways that people can become illegal immigrants. I mean, a lot of them, the real hot button right now seems to be, our border with Mexico, and how a lot of Mexican or even some other Latin American immigrants are getting across there without any sort of notice, basically. Now, it's a bit more complex than that, obviously, but those people, assuming they intend to stay in the U.S., like, permanently, are kind of sort of technically illegal immigrants. There might be an exception for if they're seeking asylum or whatever, and that's a whole nother branch of this debate that, has its own little details that we can discuss and debate over, and I don't really want to get into that too much, but for the most part, it generally seems like there are certain areas where if people are coming to the U.S. and they're seeking protection from something or another, I don't know the finer details of it, but that there should be specific places within the U.S. that they can go and live there and be safe for a while. But really, in a lot of these cases, when it comes to illegal immigration, it's not the initial aspect of coming into the U.S. that's the problem, although that does happen sometimes. It's more so the follow-up or lack thereof on what happens, I don't know, a couple years down the road, we'll say, after those people come in to the country. Now, there are, before I get too far on that line of thought, there are some people who legitimately just get shipped in these giant, basically tractor trailers full of people. I don't know for sure whether it's the drug cartels or if it's specific, kind of companies or whatever that are owned by the cartels within Mexico. But, a lot of these people that come through the border will actually, be sort of hidden inside some sort of tractor trailer or other vehicle. And because of really mostly faulty equipment and that kind of stuff that's supposed to scan the trucks as they pass through, a good amount of these people don't get noticed. So, first off, there's part of our problem. It's not necessarily that, our current strategy is the worst in the world, but the fact that some of what we have at the Mexico-U.S. border is in disrepair, and we're not doing anything to fix it. So, I have a little bit of an idea for President Trump. Rather than increasing our military budgets, which seems to be a big thing he's pushing for right now, how about we take part of that budget and use it to, you know, renew, refresh, get new equipment or whatever, basically solidify the stuff that we already have for our border. Then maybe it'll be more efficient and do what it's supposed to do. But at the same time, I can slightly understand the idea of wanting to build a wall, because it's a one-time expense that for a very long time to come then significantly reduces any illegal immigrants that might come through. They essentially then would have to come through these specific security checkpoints, and then we could feed our resources into that and keeping those updated and working properly. But at the same time, there are plenty of illegal immigrants. In fact, I think there are, if the numbers I heard are right, there are just as many, if not more, people who initially come to the United States in some sort of legal manner, like whether it's through a work visa or student visa, or basically, there's a fair number of them that basically, because of expiring visas, end up technically becoming illegal immigrants then. But they've already lived in the US a few years at that point. So unless we're keeping a really good record of who's been here how long and where they are and what they're doing and that kind of stuff, it can be a little difficult to track them down. But again, it's not so much the current plan that we have that's at fault, it's the follow-up. Whether or not you consider a wall at our southern border to be necessary, the fact of the matter is there are also other significant problems contributing to illegal immigration that really all boil down to not so much the current plan itself, but the follow-up or lack thereof. And so I wonder if, rather than spending so much on our military, for example, if we would pool those resources into, better ways to follow up on various forms of immigration, then perhaps we wouldn't need a wall? ? So rather than just focusing on one aspect of the problem, perhaps there's a better solution that we can come up with, again, in regards to follow-up, that will work across the spectrum for any and all of our immigration issues. And I'm sure there are other complexities to this, like maybe some people that mean to come to the US legally, but there's like a communication breakdown, or they don't have the proper paperwork or other information to become legal residents, or different things like that. And there are so many other complicating factors on this issue. One other thing that I wanted to say, especially in regards to, again, the US-Mexico border, is that when Donald Trump specifically, and, some of his, for lack of a better word, and to be blunt, lackeys within the Republican Party that talk about this issue and just rail on that specific aspect of it, he specifically, and they sometimes, not as often, will say this one particular phrase that really gets on my nerves, because I know, and I've heard Donald Trump specifically say something along the lines of, they're not sending their best people. Which, duh! First of all, unless you count the ones being shipped over here by the cartels, they're not, a lot of these Mexican immigrants in particular are not being sent here at all. They're coming over, many of them to try and seek refuge from all the terrible stuff that's going on in Mexico with the cartels and all that crazy business. So, obviously, they're not sending their best people over there, over the border, I mean, because some of those people aren't even being sent. They're just seeking refuge. And even if they were sending more of these people, you don't send your best people out to another country. I mean, I know in terms of foreign relations and things like that, you might go to another country and communicate a little bit and be there for a time, but you're not going to send your best people to another country permanently. Because if you really think they're your best people, you're going to keep them in your country to try to make your own country better. So, when Donald Trump or anybody else in the Republican Party says that they're not sending their best people, duh! Like, how is that even an excuse? How is that relevant or related or anything that isn't already inherently obvious when you're talking about immigration at all? Any kind of immigration, never mind illegal immigration. Now, I realize his point when he says that is to try and say that a lot of immigrants are, like drug dealers or rapists or different things like that. And again, another complex factor. Some of it comes down to people are raised that way, and that's how they know how to make a living. Other people, it's more so like they're being actually shipped over here by the cartels in order to make some sort of, we'll just say, unscrupulous dealings here in the U.S. Something I find fascinating, though, is if building a border wall was really the best solution for all of immigration, first off, why in the heck would so many Texans along the border be voting Democrat? I recently looked at a map that I think the New York Times put up that is, and I quote, an extremely detailed map of the 2016 election, where if you look at the country as a whole, you notice down around the southern border of Texas, there's a lot of blue, and even the red that is there is generally more like a pink or something like that. And so it's not super heavily, Republican. In fact, it seems to lean more toward Democrat. So if those people really thought the border wall was such a significant issue and that it was the best solution, why would there be so many of them voting Democrat in the past presidential election? Now, some people who might not know any better might think, oh, well, that's where all the immigrants are. They're gonna vote against the wall to let their families come in and other things like that, because that's how they got in. First of all, in order to vote, you have to be registered. In order to be registered to vote, you have to have some form of legal identification. So, how are illegal immigrants supposed to be voting on this stuff? How is that your excuse? Now, I realize there might be some obscure ways where they might be able to kind of work around the system somehow, but I don't see that as being something that's really just super simple. The privilege of voting is not something everybody in the world has access to at the snap of a finger. Although maybe Russia does. But no. I'm not getting into that right now. But so, again, first big point, there are so many more areas when it comes to immigration, even illegal immigration, than just the U.S.-Mexico border. And secondly, why are we so focused on, making new measures to try and stop immigration when we could be, solidifying what we already have, and especially when it comes to follow-up on, people with visas, on just anything, any of that kind of stuff, on keeping equipment up and working like it's supposed to. why are we not bothering with any of that kind of stuff? If we're really concerned about immigration, let's try and solidify what we've got at least, rather than just let it break down and then say, oh, it's not working, and then replace it entirely. But anyway, I've said enough. My main point is, this is a much more complex issue than a lot of people, especially a lot of news stations, will make it seem like it is. So anyway, that's all I've got for now. But again, I want this to be a discussion, as with any of my videos. So, if you have thoughts, stuff I completely ignored, or stuff that you feel like should be factored into this conversation, leave comments down below. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know what other stuff you want me to talk about in the future. I'm going to try to leave a link to that detailed map of the presidential election that the New York Times put out. I'm going to try and leave that in the description, along with information on my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. It's all going to be down there if you want to follow me on those pages as well. But make sure also to subscribe to my channel and click the bell to get notified whenever I post other videos if you're looking to keep up with everything that I put up here on YouTube. Otherwise, that's it for ways to keep up with me and interact with my videos and all that kind of stuff. So, I hope you're all doing well, and hopefully I will see you next time. Stay cool, people.